last session that we're running tonight, what I'm hoping to do is encourage conversations about, maybe find some new ideas, maybe shine a light on some things that we could do that we're not doing. Some opportunities, and so there's. We have esteemed, respected academics from the University of Leeds here, Alice O'Grady and Jackie Willson, who have been doing some brilliant research that I think would be helpful to us or might get us thinking about some things that they know that we could work with, or also some things that maybe are not related, but it might get some ideas going. So, Alice, could I ask you to begin with? Can you talk a little bit about your research, the areas that you've been working on? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to say I feel very out of context, I suppose. I'm on the wrong side of the hill. We're both on the wrong side of the hill, and I don't want to be set up as somebody who can advise you good people with new ideas. But I am more than happy to share a little bit about the research that we've been doing. I've been researching electronic dance music for about 25 years. I'm a professor of applied performance, so I'm actually a theatre person. And I've been making interactive and participatory performances for nightclubs for over a decade. And all of my work is really about the benefit and the positive aspects of participatory culture. And I was a student in Leeds when nightclubs weren't very good in Yorkshire. And they used to run buses over this side of the hill so that we could come and experience the clubs in Lancashire. That's been my joy, it's been my passion, and now I do research about it. And obviously I'm a lot older, and I have been studying the experiences of older women who continue to participate in electronic dance music, and really understanding that particular demographic and what they gain from being part of that culture. And obviously there's all sorts of different cultures that go on. It's not just one homogenous culture, but I've been very interested in who is included, who is excluded, who is represented, who is underrepresented, particularly in nightlife spaces and clubs in particular. And I've been doing this stuff for 25 years, and no one's really given a damn about it until a couple of months ago, when somebody picked up an article that I had published last year in the Journal of Music Psychology. And it was a study that I'd been doing with a colleague in the School of Music in Leeds. And it was about, women's experiences of nightlife. And a publication picked it up. And it kind of went viral because they took out the headline, which is, "Going clubbing has mental health benefits for women over 40. And so they've taken this as the main headline, and it's gone a bit viral. So it's all over Instagram, it's all over TikTok. I've got men in the US making TikTok videos about it, which is quite amusing. But of course, the benefits are the same, and that's what the research says. The benefits are the same whether you're 40, 14, or 74. Whatever you are, the benefits are the same. That the women that we surveyed, they go to these places and spaces because they love music. That's why they go, and that's the same whatever age you are. The second benefit was really the sense of community, and we've heard a little bit about community and the importance of community from Millie and Imogen just now. And then the third bit is to make new friends and to socialize with existing friends. But what's interesting is social media and the press, the popular press, have picked out this mental health benefit. And so the importance of building music community can't be underestimated. and that there are audiences out there who are desperate to participate, but they have barriers to participation. So what the research really looks at is what are the barriers to these women who are desperate to go out clubbing but feel they can't because it's not age appropriate, or that they will get looked down on, or they will be subject to prejudice and harassment and all of the other things that they talked about in the survey. So that's a little bit about the research that I've been doing. It's not recent. I've been doing stuff for 25 years, but as I say, it's just gained a little bit of traction because I think of the post-COVID moment. We conducted the research during COVID when, as you will all no doubt remember, clubs were the last places to reopen. So theatres had reopened, cinemas had reopened, restaurants had reopened, but nightclubs, there was still a really big question mark over it. And the women that we surveyed expressed that as grief. They expressed it as loss. And they talked in a great detail, a great emotional detail about the role, the significant role that being part of this culture plays in their lives and how it helps shape and form their identity and had done for many, many years. And so that's the research that I've been doing, and that's really across the piece. It's not just about Yorkshire, it's not just about Lancashire, but it's about a set of very human experiences of a group of people that maybe a lot of public would not necessarily associate as the target demographic for nightclubs, because traditionally academic research has seen nightclubs as being part of youth studies, and it's not that anymore. It can't just be understood as part of youth studies. It's much more central to culture and representation and identity. So that's a little bit about the work that I've been doing, and also been doing a long-standing collaboration with Jackie, who I'll let talk about her work as well.
Jackie, yes.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so the project that we've been doing really since 2020 was, first of all, it started with burlesque, the burlesque industry. And I know that sounds a bit niche, but actually what was important to learn about them is how they kind of conceptualize spaces and how they make spaces kind of, which are led by women, kind of safer. And this is how we kind of started off, but we were focusing first on costume, and which is why I was interested in the Decora outfit that the young lady was wearing. I mean, yes, over there. So we started off with focusing on costume within the burlesque industry, and then we thought this kind of freedom to express oneself through costume is contingent on particular spaces. So first of all, we made a film about the industry across the whole UK, and went into their particular clubs and spaces and small venues to understand, like how, what those spaces mean for them. That's Fabulous Femininities. And then we made another film, and we were interviewing particular kind of place-based communities about how they kind of design and conceptualize spaces to make them safer for women and for marginalized communities. And we recorded that in a film called Bold Bodies in order to perhaps share that more broadly, so that people could use that as maybe as a tool to build values imbued spaces across the industry, and to perhaps learn from a community and place-based approach to working with venues to make spaces safer. So it was basically linked to a kind of a violence against women and girls agenda. Saying that we can, why is it that we don't just learn from an industry that makes that kind of central? Why don't we learn about how they conceptualize spaces and how they work alongside venues in order to kind of, listen to everybody's needs, whether that be, like trying to get sort of bums on seats, broadening participation, making diverse lineups so that people can see and they're represented in the people that they see on the stage. So, burlesque has got like loads of, and cabaret scene has got loads of, loads that we can learn from. And I think that that's kind of what our research is about, really, about how the broader nighttime industry and economy can learn from a women's kind of women-led, women-aligned, grassroots industry. So, that's the kind of the work that we've been doing. So, I think actually making a film about some of the fantastic things that I've heard today, some really great sort of women that I've been speaking to who are running like the punk festival. It's like, okay, so, how are you making this, sort of like, welcoming for marginalised people and for women, non-binary people, going into other venues. There's a couple of women that I just spoke to just now who've got like a festival that I think is coming up in a few weeks. How are they making a positive culture? How are they making community? And those young girls that you were just interviewing, they were talking about community and culture, and it's like joining up the dots, isn't it? And all of these kind of approaches, that it's happening in Lancashire. Joining the dots and finding out sort of, what is it that as a place-based approach, what is it that we offer up in terms of an identity? What is it that we do well? And what do we need to build together to create a better kind of space, a better place? Which is, I think, what you were wanting to do next, wasn't it? But yeah, anyway, so that's what I've been doing. And I'm really, really pleased to be talking to people and for you to have asked us to come.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think on so many levels, there's a lot, you're uncovering academic dimensions that can benefit industry here.
Yeah.
This is when we have spaces, so actually, if we looked at the dance floor, the nightclub sector, it's been eroding at quite a great pace, particularly after COVID. There's very relatively few dance floors left, so, but I mean, not exclusively clubs where recorded music is the primary agenda. There's other venues, we have other venue operators in here, and it can be tough. So any opportunities to better understand how we can be more enticing, less off-putting, because I think there's a clear dimension where we're not catering. Markets are evolving. We could look at things like neurodivergent audiences just by doing things like having a map of the venue that's visible externally. So, people might be more comfortable visualizing something before they arrive. That is an example that was pointed out to me by someone from Attitude is Everything, as a very light touch enhancement.
Well, it's listening to, is it Raman? When you were saying about, like listening to other people's needs and kind of asking them what they want and doing it for them and that kind of thing. I think it's listening to what people need rather than telling. Do you see what I mean? So it's kind of like listening to, what do people need for the industry to be doing, the sector to be doing, and let's do it, and joining up the dots and kind of being active, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I really, it's kind of, we kind of try and facilitate that, don't we? And kind of bring stakeholders together. So, for example, working with, the nighttime industry like Hill, and the nighttime industry sector in Leeds, I'm part of that. Joining the dots to see how can we make the sector better, and the economy better within the nighttime industry.
Yeah. We've all contributed to the, again, I think the Lancashire Music Association aims to connect national organisations with Lancashire, and sort of bridge those. So the Nighttime Industries Association is, they run nighttime economy summits, and we've all been involved in sharing research at those that can impact on industry. But I think, there is also this thought that actually, where venues might be struggling, where might opportunities lie, where might we fill, bring people out on a Monday night, which is not, traditionally a very difficult night to do anything with, and I wondered if burlesque burlesque could be established in some of our venues as a profitable activity, whilst also acknowledging market needs, wants, and demands. So I've got a question, though, Jackie, which is, as a researcher, if there was a venue or some venues in Lancashire that might be interested in working with or developing or being a research facilitator, might you be able to get a grant to do something where some activity could take place? Maybe look at how we could establish some weekly, monthly sessions or some activity, trying to get traction on this, because burlesque is quite a fascinating, multifaceted, multi-dimensional thing, entity, really, isn't it? Which you're the experts on it. I'm.
Well, it's pulling them out from the dark. Yeah. They're probably already here in Lancashire, I think. It's finding the scene, where the cabaret scene is, where the drag scene is, where the kind of, the burlesque scene is, and then inviting them and kind of.
So there's some research there, isn't there? To kind of work out what's already here.
Yeah.
And then, look for, see if we can seed some more or nurture that, that kind of activity. But our venues are a really important part of our infrastructure, in Lancashire. And they do amazing, they're places where, things coalesce, aren't they, really? Audiences and creators and so on. So, but I'm interested to see if this might, and also I think there's this idea of, we were talking about women over 40, and, to actually understand, better that perspective, to be able to facilitate, there's got to be opportunities for our venues to look at both as opportunities. Now, I do know that on one hand, they are usually all very busy fighting fires and they don't have loads of time. And that's, I think, a very real, the reality of running venues. But at the same time, we have to try and find new approaches, and they both feel to me, I have a lot of experience in the social consumption of music and running venues and festivals. They're things that I would be exploring, I would be looking at if I was operating a venue now, I think.
Well, they usually insist on a diverse lineup. They always insist on kind of complex intersectionalities are represented on the stage. Yeah. And they're also very much about kind of participation and making sure that the audiences are involved, get dressed up. Yeah. You can get dressed up, you can go out, you can go back by 11 o'clock and still be able to get up for work, So it's a kind of different approach to nighttime that's not just centered around booze culture. Yeah. You can drink, and they make a lot of money on the at the bar for these nights. I mean, in Barnsley, they were all there drinking at 6 o'clock at night. The whole place was absolutely, absolutely swelling with people, because the whole community came out to support, So and that's the way of getting venues kind of really rocking. Yeah. The drinks was overflowing from 6, and they were there. They wouldn't leave till midnight. So, it's a kind of strategy, isn't it, for helping small venues that may be suffering.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's a winner. We broaden our diversity, the range of things that we offer, and we're inclusive and accessible and thoughtful about how we approach these things.
I mean, it's bringing music together with other forms, isn't it? So, like the good old vaudeville, you have somebody that's, swallowing a sword on, one stage, and then you have a musician, and then you have something else. And that kind of vaudevillian is a bit for everybody, you see. Yeah. And everyone can see themselves on the stage or.
The thing that the burlesque community do particularly well is speak to their community. So they form their own community, and they speak to the people that are coming to work out exactly what you said before about what do they need.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you need? Okay, if I'm coming in a wheelchair, I need the chairs not to be this close together. I need to be able to get down the aisle. I need to know that there's an access room where I can go and take a quiet moment if necessary. I need to know whether there's stairs into the venue. I need to know, and they speak to their communities, and then they adapt. And that is part of their function, is to provide a space that meets a diverse set of needs. So really it kind of goes back to what are the barriers to participation, and how can we dismantle those barriers in a way that supports everybody's participation, even those people who don't necessarily fit the mold of who you might think wants to participate in a particular thing. Or a particular scene.
Yeah. And it's listening to the needs of everybody in this room, whatever sector or whatever part of the sector that you're working in. It's listening to the needs of the people that you're serving, and sort of like, focus groups, or inviting them in, or asking, and then delivering on trying to, solve, give solutions to whatever the gap is, But it's listening to people, isn't it? And rather than thinking that you know better,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this notion of anticipating people's needs, wants, and demands, and you can anticipate them a lot better if you know what they are. And I think this kind of thinking could help us get better. What we're doing, because we're actually in Lancashire, we're not looking to replicate Manchester or Liverpool. No. We're looking for our, we have our own brilliant, unique things, and scope to grow more brilliant.
And it's reflecting on that identity, isn't it? It's like, well, what are we? What is the flavour that people get when they come to this particular region? And then what about the particular flavours of each venue? And it's understanding that, isn't it? It's like, what are our values? What do we represent? But
it could be trying something new. Sorry, Alice. It could be trying something new, couldn't it? That if people haven't been to a burlesque event, or
Well, I was just going to say, it doesn't really matter what the flavour is, but it's what Jackie says about the values. So we heard from Jenny in the Rebellion Festival earlier. The punk values are very clearly articulated. They're very clearly expressed. Everybody knows what those are because they've been around for a long, long time. So you can buy into that, and if you're going to go to a Rebellion Festival, you're going to see people who look like you, who behave like you, and probably believe the same as you. But if you're sat at home and you don't have that model or that version, you're not going to go to a venue if you don't think you're going to see people like you. You're just not going to go. So if you're 74, and I say 74 because I have a particular friend in mind who is 74, who likes nothing more than dancing till 6 a.m. to electronic dance music. She wants to go to those kind of venues with people who share the same values as her. She doesn't want to be the only 74-year-old there, but she equally doesn't want to be speaking to only 74-year-olds. It's about intergenerational spaces that are diverse and inclusive. But run along a similar kind. People can understand the values and share those values. And what burlesque does well is co-creates the values. Yep. It doesn't do it as top down. It does it as a co-created activity.
And then you see the queue in a burlesque night. You see the queue, and you've got like an elderly couple standing next to a goth chick, standing next to other subcultural people, standing next to women in their 60s going out for a night out. So the queue is representational of their ethic and their kind of principles and their values. And I think that could be perhaps replicated or duplicated in other venues.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have to. A really important thing is for me to acknowledge the brilliant work, that the people in this room do, and I could name check, everyone that actually I know a bit. I could talk about the brilliant things that they do. I'm looking at Jason over there, who did a brilliant event called, Preston Creative Social on Sunday at
Which one is he?
Jason with the red hat.
That one. Okay.
And there was all kinds of wonderful, people getting creative and really, you know, and it's for everyone and it's inclusive, and that's just an example, and there are lots of other examples of these things that are brilliant that are happening. But I think again, kind of one of the things I'm trying to do is encourage, and maybe point to, ask people what other things we could do. And I think it felt to me like in this conversation, there was a really solid research base behind what you've done that can point to possibilities, to women over 40, burlesque, and also that's a trail of breadcrumbs to some other things that we haven't thought of yet that we could do, in audiences, in our infinite variety, people like lots of different things, and more niche activities are becoming more necessary and more viable, and it require further exploration than we may have done traditionally. So I think we can get a bit experimental, and maybe I think there's some obvious things as well. I think it feels to me that where your research is, that they're obvious for us to explore further.
I interviewed a performer, and she grew up in the punk scene in Huddersfield, and her parents, and I didn't even realise there was a punk scene in Huddersfield. So it kind of spawned these people who are now in burlesque.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the legacy of the punk scene in Huddersfield means that they then became these sort of fantastic politicized burlesque kind of performers.
Yeah, it can grow into something quite remarkable, can't it? Should we just do a quick? I'm mindful we have timed out. We've shot slightly over our what I promised, the 5 o'clock mark. But should we just see if there's any questions in the room? I'm really hoping that one of the venue operators will go, I'm really interested in doing that research thing. Can you get some money, and can we try some stuff?
It would be fabulous, wouldn't it?
But I saw Jason's hand fly up earlier.
Hello.
I've got a few questions.
Hello, my name is Jason. I run Preston Creative Social, as Tony said. I also run an event called Sexy Walk Disco Club. Yeah. So
Are you liking the sound of that,
I
Alice?
find everything that you said extremely interesting. But on that point of trying to keep marginalised communities safe, do you have any resources or organisations or things or mechanisms that stand out to you, or case studies that would be really useful for people to look at as an example or reach out to help them make more safer spaces wherever they're doing things?
There's Dominus von Vexo in Birmingham. It is a really fantastic case study for. Is that what you mean in terms of practice?
Can you say that again? Sorry, what was it called? What was it called?
Dominus von Vexo is House of Allure in Birmingham. He's really good for kind of encouraging, probably 50 plus kind of age women, working class, to come to his kind of very queer and drag events. So he mixes these kind of like working class, white working class women to his kind of queer scene, and it works. These disenfranchised and marginalised people together. Having a bloody good night,
Can I suggest, Jason? One of the thoughts is there's an organisation called Attitude is Everything, and it's about kind of accessibility. It sort of transcends. It goes beyond physical, constraints and barriers. Of getting people into venues and so on. We have on our special advisory board. So these are things that are quite specialist. Maya Barker is an advisor that we have at the Lancashire Music Association, and she helped write the charter and did quite a lot of work on, particularly things like neurodivergence, and so understanding how we can make our spaces, just removing these barriers that
Which I was going to say as well, we can share the films that we've made as part of the research. We'll do that via Tony, because actually that is the burlesque community talking about their practices. So as academics, we don't tell people how to do stuff, but we work with the people to amplify what they want. So yeah, we can share those links, and then you can see it in their own words.
And also what's good about in the Bold Bodies film is that they also fold in other kind of traditions, grassroots traditions of safeguarding bodies. So that's kind of kink, that's drag, you know, in the queer sort of safeguarding of bodies, but also, what's the other one? Kink, drag.
BDSM.
BDSM, sex work, right? Sex worker ways of kind of protecting bodies. So there's the kind of different traditions of safeguarding bodies that we never really draw from. And this is established, you know, within the queer community and drag community, of how they kind of protect bodies that are really vulnerable, and they have their own kind of way of doing that. So why don't we learn from that, you know? And this is a nighttime industry model, you know, drag.
So the issues of consent are really, really well articulated in all of those spaces. And so what connects a lot of our work is understanding from the burlesque community how they make consent, enthusiastic consent, explicit, and how we can all learn from that in other spaces that aren't necessarily working with the explicit body.
And it's about labour as well. It's about making sure that everyone gets paid. It's about kind of like backstage etiquette. It's about kind of, you know, behaviours, you know. There's a lot to learn from these particular industries, you know.
If Johnny was here, he'd be rushing off to the studio to make a Lucilla's burlesque playlist record, I think, you know. So opportunities for creators as well, you know. More questions? People are staying, so it must be good.
Hiya. So I'm Frank. I'm a venue manager. We try and put on a variety of events. So Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, they're all, I'd say, aimed at different crowds. But obviously, we don't want to seem like any of those nights exclude other crowds, all intermingling kind of thing. Is there any advice on how you'd put on an event and just show that it is for everybody, really, without sort of losing the selling point of the night?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question. And, you know, one of the things that we have thought about a lot, actually, when we've been at the NTIA summit in the past, is that very fine balance between making an event welcoming and inclusive to all, or making an event which is specific for a particular group, and so that you're advertising or marketing for a particular group. So I don't have any advice because I don't run events, but I would say that being aware of that messaging that's going out, and getting those people who you want to attract to work with you.
Yes,
that's
to read it.
To read it, because language can be a minefield, and we don't always know when we're making mistakes with language. And that's why working in the burlesque community, working with the burlesque community has been so great, because they will tell you when you get it wrong.
And I've screwed up. I have screwed up on many occasions.
And we have to be really careful with language. We have to be really careful with imagery. We have to be careful with font. We have to be careful with all of these things.
Pronouns.
But we won't necessarily know from our own positions of privilege. And I think that's the thing, is that we have to work in partnership. So we work in partnership with the communities that we work with. And I'd say as event promoters or organisers or venues, I would say go out to the people that you want to attract and ask them. Just ask them, just speak to them. But yeah, I think there is a real balance, isn't there, between being specific and being broad. But people, you know, the other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, the cost of living crisis, we shouldn't, you know, this has such a massive impact, and people's expectations of a night out are much higher because they have less money to spend. So they kind of want to know that they're going to get value for money. And what are they going to get? They don't want to turn up to somewhere where they feel out of place or at unease, you know, for whatever reason. they want to feel at home, they want to feel like they belong, they want to see other people who are like them, and they want to have their needs catered for. And that's a big ask. You know, that's tough. And that's why I think speaking and community building and co-creation has got to be the way forward. And I think if you're working in smaller communities, that's a little bit easier than big places like Manchester and so on.
And it's communication. Because it's like you want to know what you're going to. It's like today, it was like, God, where am I going to? You know? So it's like it's communicating with them and having that with the people that come in, saying, this is what you're going to get. When you get here, there's going to be this toilet, there's going to be this, you know, that kind of like, you know, that communication is key for making people feel like that they are going somewhere where they're going to feel welcome and they're, you know, but they know where they're going to and what it entails, you know.
There's a democratization consideration here where people are, where, you know, again, the word co, isn't it, really, where our audiences are intrinsic, you know, to what we're doing. They're considered, you know, where the product stops and the audience starts, you know, is quite, should be maybe a very blurry line. But again, you know, in order to anticipate wants, needs and demands, you know, we need to listen really, you know, and removing barriers to access, you know, so that could be something that's slightly off-putting. The more slightly off-putting things that are part of that experience, the more likely they are to not come. I think also there's that premiumized idea as well that, you know, the big experience, people's expectations are high, you know, and, you know, that if people have to take, you know, make very careful choices about how they choose their leisure experiences. I mean, ultimately, you know, and this is a fact, people would go out more. This is what research has clearly indicated, if they had more money, you know, or at all, if they could afford to. You know, leisure, you know, is discretionary. You know, if you've got to pay your energy bills or put a roof over your head, you know, most people will choose to do that, to put their money into that rather, you know, feeding their children than going out. And, you know, so we have to really work hard to entice people. We have to be better than ever. And, you know, it's evolution.
People also want joy.
Say again, sorry.
People also want joy.
They do need joy.
They
and
do.
that's, we have a responsibility to deliver
Because
that.
of all of that.
Yeah. More than ever, you know,
Yeah.
very often when things are really tough, you know, but actually I would say that economically it's, you know, this is the tightest pinch. You know, we did some research about previous recessions, and actually, you know, the conclusion was people would still have their fun, but actually this bites deeper than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been, you know, in the social consumption of music for, you know, since the late 80s. You know, so we, you know, we just have to be brilliant, and of course we are.
Yeah. Anyway, that's great.
So I think I think should we take one
Good
more
one.
question? I can see that, you know, whilst we've got these brilliant people here, this brilliant assembly.
Hi. This was more a response to the last question, but also a reaffirmation of the point at the same time. So I'm part of a community that openly speaks about how they operate and run a festival. And it's one of the best examples I've ever been part of with regards to how they communicate out to their audience. And part of that communication is based around, if you've not been here before, this is what to expect from the people that do go. And they've actually created like an accessibility document that is completed by the attendees of like the last previous years for people who might think about going. So you can imagine a person who might be like, ooh, it looks like they're having a really good time. I want to go, but I'm a bit scared. Yeah. But they can go to this document and read about what real people who have attended have said about it to inform them of how confident their decision making might be about attending something they're interested in. So to answer your question, maybe ask the people who currently go to inform the people who might go. And to go full circle, do you guys feel on stage that that's a good approach?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I don't think we can underestimate how the world's attitude to risk has shifted. That's not just economic risk, but that's risk to liveness. You know, we live most of our lives mediated through an online world. And so taking the risk to go to a new thing without the knowledge is just sometimes too much for people. So we have to remove those barriers. And one of the bits of research that came out from the survey that I did was that the return to clubbing, in particular clubbing, after COVID, the rapid return was in the over 35s. And the 18 to 21-year-olds were the group that returned more slowly, because they'd spent 2 years of their lives not having those experiences. And so their attitude to risk and going out had completely shifted. And so I think we just have to change our orientation to what risk looks like in terms of participating in live events. People need more information, they need more reassurance, they need to know what the mechanics are about. Even knowing things like, are there going to be women door staff? Or is it going to be men that I'm going to be faced with who might be, you know, demanding to search me, for example? Are there going to be gender neutral toilets? Are there going to be accessible toilets? Those kinds of things, which we have to check our own privilege, because that might not cross my mind, but it might cross somebody else's mind.
Or even simple things like, do you have a cloakroom? Am I going to have anywhere to put my bag? I don't know. And just simple things, like practical things, where you just sort of like, people might start panicking or being a bit anxious. You know, like, where am I going to put this? Is there going to be this? You know, so it's almost. I mean, part of the research, I went to a strip club in Sheffield. And they did it. She did a really fantastic job. It was for like queer people on the whole, and did just like you said. You know, like, so you knew exactly where you were going to go, who was going to be there, what the experience was going to be like, whether you were going to have to, you know, put money in the pants or whatever. So by doing that, you knew what you were going into, and it was less scary. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm supposed to do a roundup. That was the last thing, but is there any, just to the floor, is there anything anyone else wants to say or add? Because I think we probably should wrap it up and then head over to the Ferret for networking if people want to continue the conversations. Is everybody happy?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Jackie. Amazing. Thank you all. You've been tremendous.